Hey guys, it's Paul from One of a Kind Reviews. Unfortunately not joined by Dale today due to technical difficulties with his WWE network. But the show must go on, so this is Review Roulette, Summerslam 2002.
If you mess with me, you got no chance. No chance in hell, you got no chance.
So we started the night with Rey Mysterio versus Kurt Angle. So Rey Mysterio made a sneak entrance here. So while everyone was looking at the Titantron, the entrance ramp, looking for Rey, Rey appeared where the announcers' desks were at the back of the ring, right behind Kurt Angle, and started the match with a springboard onto Kurt Angle, getting the advantage. So yeah, this was a really, really athletic match. The reversals and just chain wrestling between these two was phenomenal. Rey makes suplexes look amazing, and Kurt Angle doesn't even need anyone to make them look amazing. So yeah, the pairing of these two was really, really good. There was a point where Rey Mysterio took a German suplex after he does like his little wheelbarrow thing that he usually does into a bulldog or a roll-up. Kurt Angle reversed that into a German suplex, and Rey went absolutely flying. And yeah, so Rey did a dive over the ref onto Angle on the outside, much reminiscent of Sasha Banks and Bayley in Brooklyn, I believe. And yeah, so that was one of the bigger spots. There was a near fall off of a 619. Rey Mysterio was very close to getting the win on that one. Then the finish of the match was Rey Mysterio went for a Hurricane Rana from the top rope. Kurt Angle countered it into an ankle lock and made Rey Mysterio tap out. So that was a really competitive, athletic, just all-around entertaining match. So I gave that a 4 horsemen out of 5. Alright, so moving on, we had Ric Flair versus Chris Jericho. So this was a good match between the two, very physical as you would expect. Ric Flair, who was in his 50s by this point, was very, very much still a talented worker and could put on an entertaining match with anyone. So it's good that he got Jericho, because Jericho could put on a match with a broomstick and it'd be entertaining. So some notable spots from this, Flair botched his little exaggerated Irish whip over the ropes onto the apron. He just kind of got caught in the ropes and fell, so that was funny. And so later on in the match, Jericho got Flair into the figure 4, and in which Flair tapped out while holding the ropes, which was a little bit confusing because it was very, very orchestrated. You could see that the minute he touched the ropes he was going to tap. So yeah, it wasn't a very well executed spot, to be honest. But so Jericho obviously got up from that, broke the figure 4, assuming that he'd won the match by submission. So Jericho then got bumped into the ref. Flair threw a low blow at Jericho and locked in the figure 4. And eventually Jericho tapped. So yeah, good match by these guys. Probably some of the best chops I've ever seen by Ric Flair, even though that's his thing. And in response, some of the best chops I've seen from Jericho. So good match by both of them. I gave it a 3 MB out of 5. Moving on, we had Eddie Guerrero versus Edge. To be honest, I was a little bit disappointed by this match. Obviously, Edge hadn't quite hit his stride as a singles competitor. This was probably really the start of his singles push, just after he won King of the Ring and all that. But there was nothing really special from this match. It was just Eddie Guerrero versus Edge, what you would expect. The absolute bare minimum and nothing else. And yeah, that's pretty much all I need to say about that match, guys. Edge won the match with a spear after he reversed clothesline, I believe. So yeah, nothing too special about that. I gave it a Scotty 2 Hottie out of 5. Moving on to the first championship match of the night. It was Christian and Lance Storm, the Un-Americans, versus Booker T and Goldust. Christian and Lance Storm being the champions coming into this. So I liked the whole Un-American gimmick and the whole like flying the American flag upside down as a sign of distress, and to represent the upside down beliefs of the country and all that. You know, great way for a Canadian to get heel, hey? Just chuck them all together in a stable and make them racist. I'm not sure whether Test was actually like at ringside in this match or whether he just did a run-in at the end. But either way, he was part of the Un-American stable, and he played a big part in the finish, obviously. Lance Storm knocked down the ref as soon as Booker T pretty much had it won. He had them all set up for the scissors kick, and he ended up getting, I think the count by the crowd got to 11. Not that he was covering them for 11 seconds, and not that anyone would kick out when there's not a pin cover actually happening, but either way. So, Booker T had it won at that point, and then Test did a run-in, hit a big boot, and Christian got the pinfall off of the big boot. And not much more to say about that. The Un-Americans retain, and I gave it a Scotty 2 Hottie out of 5. Up next, we had the Nydia Makeout competition. Very weird segment. Not sure why Jamie Noble was kind of just running a competition to see who could make out with his girlfriend. But, all I've got to say is lucky bastard. Alright, so moving on from that, we had the Intercontinental Championship match. It was Chris Benoit defending the IC title against Rob Van Dam. So apparently this was the only interpromotional match for the night. So it was Raw versus SmackDown, essentially. So we saw some backstage segments with Eric Bischoff and Stephanie McMahon arguing over who got the office of the general manager and who was going to win this match, basically. So Eric Bischoff turned out to be right. Rob Van Dam won. Mr. One-of-a-Kind himself. This was a really good match. It was very physical from Benoit. He had a really good showing in this match. They knew how to make him lose without making him look bad, and this was a perfect example of that. So he pretty much turned everything into a submission and reversed most of what Rob Van Dam did in the match. So he was targeting the shoulder. At one point, I think he hit 4 Northern Lights suplexes in a row with the arm kind of like chicken wing behind Rob Van Dam's back. Then Rob Van Dam tried to put the crippler crossface on Chris Benoit, which that's a big mistake. Not only that, but it was a horrific looking crossface. So Rob Van Dam reversed a back superplex into a crossbody and followed that up with a 5-star frog splash and got the 1-2-3 and won the Intercontinental Championship. What I wanted to point out after the match, even though he was ridiculously exhausted and could barely even stand up, Rob Van Dam still did the thumbs when he was announced as the new Intercontinental Championship. He was laying on his back, but he still did the thumbs. So, I gave that a 3.5 MB out of 5, guys. Alright, next up we had the Un-American Test versus The Undertaker, who was the American badass in this era. So it was, America versus Canada, essentially. There was nothing really exciting in this match for the most part. It was just very, very physical, very, big punches, big moves, just by 2 big men, ironically. Lance Storm and Christian ended up interfering in the match and pretty much just got their ass kicked by Undertaker. So, Taker chokeslammed both of them, Test had the cheap attack and tried to get the pinfall. He just missed it. And then Test and Taker kind of fought over a steel chair that Test brought into the ring. The ref kind of got thrown around in this position as well. The big boot from Undertaker to Test, holding the chair in front of his face conveniently. And followed that up with a tombstone pile driver for the victory. So, and then Taker grabbed the American flag after the match to kind of like hold it up as, you know, big patriotic moment. And he almost did the same thing as the Un-Americans and held it upside down. So, good save there, Taker. Good save. So, yeah, it wasn't a fantastic match. I gave it a 3 MB out of 5. So moving on, we had the Triple H versus Shawn Michaels unsanctioned match. Now, there was a big storyline angle leading into this one. This was the return of Shawn Michaels after his back problems and stuff since he left in 98, I believe, after WrestleMania. So a lot was made out of the back injury of Shawn Michaels. The majority of Triple H's offense was based around the back. A lot of hard Irish whips into the corner, a lot of back breakers. So it was basically just that kind of thing, Triple H wearing Shawn Michaels down for a long time. So it ended up the DDT from Triple H onto the steel chair ended up busting Shawn Michaels open. He then proceeded to use Shawn Michaels' own leather belt on him. Then he took a really long time to find a sledgehammer, and I felt kind of bad for Shawn having to sell for that amount of time. But yeah, he ended up getting the sledgehammer, after which Earl Hebner absolutely went off his nut at Triple H, saying that he was sick of him, he was sick of the chairs, he was sick of the belt, he was sick of all the weapons being involved. And, it was an unsanctioned match. He couldn't do anything, but he still thought he'd give Triple H a piece of his mind. So, well done, Earl. Well done. Very ballsy by you, to be honest. Then we had the infamous backdrop onto the open chair by Triple H on Shawn Michaels. It seemed to be made more devastating by the whole angle around Shawn's back injury and how, that the WWE didn't want anything to do with this match. They didn't want to sanction the match, hence the unsanctioned match. So Shawn Michaels hit a sweet chin music into Triple H while he was holding the chair, ended up bleeding from that point. So Triple H bladed like a motherfucker here. He was, in JR's words, he was bleeding profusely. He was a crimson mask. So then Shawn Michaels started getting back into it from that point. That was the major turning point in the match. So Shawn then, he did just his normal, flying face strike or whatever you want to call it, and then the crowd absolutely went nuts when he did his little, nip up thing. And then he proceeded to wear the absolute shit out of Triple H with said leather belt from before, which was quite painful to watch, to be honest. I don't know how Triple H didn't end up having ridiculous welts on his back. But then he went over and he did one of the funniest things in this match, by far. One of the highlights of the night, to be honest, was Shawn Michaels went over to the Spanish announce table. I think it was Carlos Cabrera. He removed his shoe and smacked Triple H in the head with it. And that led to a very funny line from Jerry the King Lawler. He said, "It was a heel for a heel." So, good call there, Jerry. Good call. So then Shawn Michaels brought out the ladder, started, your general offense with ladders, just whacking each other and whatnot. Then towards the end of the match, we had Shawn Michaels grab a table out, and he smacked Triple H in the face with a fire extinguisher, of all things, leading to Triple H being laid out on the table. Shawn then climbed up to the top rope and gestured that he was crazy, and then proceeded to do a very, very nasty looking splash through the table. And and then from there they went back into the ring. Shawn grabbed the ladder and ended up doing an elbow drop from the top of the ladder, and miraculously he was okay, and then started, tuning up the band for Sweet Chin Music. So Triple H reversed that one, went for a pedigree, and then Shawn Michaels reversed the pedigree into a roll-up, and the roll-up ended up giving Shawn Michaels the victory. Surprisingly enough, after all of that, a roll-up finishes the match. So that was quite strange. So overall, I gave that match a 5-time out of 5. And probably have to mention after the match, Triple H attacked Shawn Michaels with a sledgehammer, and we got the infamous moment of everyone being very, very, very worried about Shawn Michaels in the condition he was in. But fantastic heel moment there for Triple H, fantastic match. And that'll wrap it up for that match. So 5-time out of 5, guys. So next we had a little bit of a Howard Finkel segment of all things. So he got onto the mic, said he had a couple of things he needed to get off of his chest, and said that this was the first pay-per-view that he had announced in that building since WrestleMania 2. And the commentators were going on about this, saying, who cares? Who cares the last time you were here? What's Finkel doing? He's such an idiot, all these things. They really didn't like Howard Finkel. So he was obviously a heel at this point for some fucking reason. So he said, Major League Baseball may be on strike, but you'll always have the Fink. After which Trish Stratus interrupted, came down to the ring and just distracted Howard Finkel with promises of hugs and whatnot, and her low-cut tops, let's be honest. And so the distraction ended up being so that Lillian Garcia could sneak into the ring, and once Howard Finkel turned around, gave him a big old slap and a kick in the nuts. So, good moment for Lillian there, not so great for the Fink. So on to the final match of the night, the WWE Championship match between The Rock, being the champion coming into this one, versus the next big thing, Brock Lesnar. So, I was honestly a little bit disappointed with this match. I think between the two people involved in the match and the amount of time that they got for the match, it should have been a lot better. Not to say that it was a bad match, it was very solid, but there was, if you missed this match, you didn't really miss much apart from the actual, who went over in the match. So, Paul Heyman was a big factor in this match, obviously, being Brock's manager. He brought in a chair for Brock to use on The Rock. He used it on the injured ribs of The Rock, which played into the match a lot. Later on in the match, Heyman actually got put through the Spanish announce table, which lasted until the main event. So, good work, Spanish announce team. So he got rock bottom through the table by The Rock, and that took Heyman out of the equation, so advantage Rock at that point. And then The Rock went back in the ring, had a bit of an exchange with Brock, and then Brock hit the, as called by Taz, the Brock Bottom. So, great call there, Taz, great call. And he kicked out of that. Then there was a whole bunch of reversals after this. So, The Rock reversed something of Lesnar's into a spine buster, which set up the People's Elbow. The People's Elbow was reversed into an F5. The F5 was reversed into a Rock Bottom, and the Rock Bottom was once again reversed into an F5. And that was the end of the match. So, like I said, very disappointed in this match. It was good, but it could have been great. So I gave it a 3.5 MB out of 5. Alright, and overall I gave the pay-per-view a 3.5 MB out of 5. I mean, it was a solid show. The good matches were really good, but if I'm honest, there was only 2 of those. I thought that Rey Mysterio and Kurt Angle, considering it was the first match out and they didn't get a hell of a lot of time, did very, very well. Obviously, the Triple H Shawn Michaels unsanctioned match was the highlight of the night. And there's a lot of matches on here that, on paper, you would think would be absolute dream matches, and a lot of them really didn't deliver. So, those would be Ric Flair, Chris Jericho, Eddie Guerrero and Edge. Benoit and Van Dam even could have been a lot better. And obviously The Rock and Brock Lesnar could have been a hell of a lot better than it actually turned out to be. So, yeah, I gave it a 3.5 MB out of 5. And that is all I will say about that pay-per-view. So we'll find out what we're doing next time. Since I have no one else to draw it out, I will draw this out myself. Alright, what do we got? Okay, so next time we will be doing No Way Out 2001. And that is the whole fucking show, guys. So like, rate, subscribe, share our video with a friend. Leave a comment what you thought of this pay-per-view. Leave a comment on another pay-per-view that we could put in the hat, because we're running out of suggestions and we need your help, guys. So, yep, we'll see you next time for some more Review Roulette. Have a nice day.
If you